A lot of people have played the base game of Carcassonne, but have you checked out any of the expansions? We're going to take a look at some of them today here on Legendary Tactics. The first tutorial we're going to look at is Inns and Cathedrals, and this is a very quick tutorial to show you how to play it and give you a sense of how this expansion might be used in the base game. So the first thing is, fortunately, the tutorial has been set up already for us, and so we're going to introduce the first new component, which is called the large meeple. And the large meeple gives you the opportunity to steal away an opponent's city, for example, by essentially counting as 2 meeples in one. So if we click on the large meeple, it's worth 2 regular meeples when resolving disputed features. So it is perfect in this instance where you're looking to steal a city away from an opponent. So very simple mechanic, and I don't know, maybe not that terribly inspired, but you know, again, any of these things can spice up the gameplay a little bit and make it a little more interesting. So you can see we closed out this this city, and we're because we have our large meeple there. It's 2 for 1. We're going to play a farmer here, and so we look at the meeple value of both players, and it's 2 to 1. So we get control of the city, and when the large meeple, when the feature is closed, it will return to your hand. Now, the risk is that if you put it on, say, a monastery, or sometimes when you're trying to complete a large, feature, what have you, then it can be trapped and wasted. And so you got to be careful how you use it. You don't want it to end up on an unfinished feature at the end of the game, because then, you know, it's been kind of trapped there for a period of time. So there we got 6-0 on that castle there, which is great. So now he puts down the monastery, and so we are going to look at the next optional part of this expansion, which is the inn tiles. And the inns, you can always tell them because they have a little pond and they're right next to a road. And so we'll just throw that onto this space here to close out this road. Now we're going to place our meeple here to score the points, and the inns actually double the value of the road. So we complete a tile with an inn, 2 points per tile instead of just 1. So that can be a really valuable thing. The drawback, though, is if you cannot close the road by the end of the game, that road will not yield any points. So I think, you know, what's neat about this balancing feature with these two, the large meeple and the inns, is that you can certainly use it to complete a short road or a small castle, for example. You're not going to necessarily want to push the limit on this because you know, you could get stuck. So I think that's a good kind of, it almost adds a bit of a push your luck mechanic to the game, as a little bit more so than already exists. And so as it suggests here, you can actually place the inn on the opponent's road. So if the opponent's having trouble completing a road, or if it's a road to nowhere, place the inn there, and it cancels out the points that they would otherwise score at the end of the game. So kind of a neat little strategy tip there. And then from there we're gonna introduce the cathedrals, which is one of the parts of the game that is we're part of the expansion that's in the name of the game. And placing it within a city will boost both the city tile and coat of arms values to 3, but only if you close the city. So if we put the cathedral there and play it, and then we play our meeple in there, then it actually looks really nice too visually. I think it fits very well. The components, I think the Carcassonne is one of those games where it's been around so long, people forget the how well it visually snaps together. I think it's great. So we're going to close the city off and score some points. And we'll drop a farmer there. Perfect. So we have 18 points coming from that. So you can see there's 6 tiles. There were 3 points per city tile, and 3 points for each coat of arms instead of 2. So the cathedral, if you can pull it off, that is one heck of a big payday. But be careful, as it says, if you cannot close the city by the end of the game, the city will not yield any points. So it continues with that push your luck theme that I think this expansion kind of adds to the base game. This is again a great way to prevent an opponent from scoring points toward the end of the game if they're working on a big city that they're not actually planning on closing. They're just looking on getting some free points at the end. Drop a cathedral there and cancel that score out. And when you cancel out an opponent's score, that's as good as if you had played a play to score those points yourself. So it's all about you can score points, but you can also prevent your opponent from scoring, and that's just as good. So this is the first expansion. Now we'll move on to the next one. Traders and Builders is our next tutorial here. And so there's a few interesting extras here. So the Builder meeple, you can see it looks a bit more like a chess piece than maybe a meeple, but the Builder allows you to take a double turn. And basically if you expand the feature that it's on, then it will give you a double turn. So in this case, we're going to expand the road that the Builder is on, and we place the tile normally. So in this case, we want to place a meeple in the city. Perfect. And the Builder then gives us another turn because we expanded the road, the feature that the Builder was on. So we get an extra tile. Now we can't keep chaining it. It's only one extra tile, but it does give you that benefit. So we get an extra. We get to expand our city there. Sorry, I called it a castle earlier. I think with all the flags, it just feels like a castle. Anyway, so an important detail about the Builder is that it does not count as a meeple when resolving disputed features. So if you have a Builder inside a castle, then it's not going to count as a meeple for the purpose of a dispute if there's that going on. So we're going to close the road off here and get some meeples back. And you can see that guy scores a 5 and nothing happens with the Builder. So, but because we expanded on that feature, then we again get the double turn. So we're going to take that and we're going to place a castle piece here and drop a farmer there. Or actually, sorry, we're gonna click on the Builder, sorry, and we're gonna put them in the city, and that allows us to build that city twice as fast potentially if we get the right tiles. So placing it on an incomplete feature doesn't actually give you the double turn. You need to expand that feature in order for that double turn thing to work. All right, so, and you're probably noticing these goods that are popping up on the cities here. So we'll show you how that works. So here we're going to place the expansion on the city, and that's going to give us another turn, which is great. Now we're going to delve into the different types of goods that are present in these on these city tiles. So there's the wine, the grain there, and the cloth. All right, and these are ways that again just bonus points essentially. A city can hold multiple goods at the same time, and when you complete a city, then you earn the goods. Even if you close off the opponent's city, whoever closes off the city gets the goods. So that's kind of an intriguing mechanic where you may actually want to help your opponent with a city, say, in order to snag some goods. And the goods, in a nutshell, whoever holds the most of each goods type will score 10 points. In the case of a tie, all tied players earn 10 points. So that's a lot of points. It's 10 points each for each of the goods. So whoever has the highest amount in each category gets 10 points. So probably in practice, I haven't played this through, but I would guess that if there's any sort of sense of competition at all, it's probably going to be a 10-point swing, because there's probably going to be, unless one player completely ignores that, there's going to be competition, and probably one player will get ahead in one, say in the wine, and the other player will get ahead in cloth, and then it's typically how these things work. So it's good to keep in mind, but probably a lot of it's going to be become a wash in many ways. So but definitely good to realize. So because we completed the city, his builder came back, so he dropped that in his city there. So now we're going to talk about the pig meeple, and that can be played only on a farm that you own. And the pig is used at the end of the game during the field score count and adds +1 point per city for its field, but only if you score that field. So we're going to play this tile here, and we're going to play the pig into the monastery there, and that will give us additional points. Now in this case, it's going to happen anyway, or probably anyway, I should say, because we are in position to score this field. But if the pig actually doesn't count as a meeple when resolving the disputed features, and it's only if you score that field, so you otherwise don't get the points. And so that is the second expansion that I want to show you. There's one more, and we'll go to that now. The Princess and the Dragon is the last of the tutorials that I'll show you today. And so the board has already been set up, and we're going to play a tile to show the fairy meeple. Okay, now the fairy is a neutral meeple that is shared between all the players. You kind of fight over it, basically. So we're going to so it appears in your meeple panel, but it's not really yours. It's just appearing there if you want to click on it. It's basically the interface. And so we're going to pick the fairy, and you drop the fairy onto an existing meeple. So the fairy is played by assigning it to one of your meeples as a fairy godmother. So we're going to assign it, and you just put the meeple right on top there, and there we go. He's got a fairy godmother, which is great. So the fairy will earn you 1 point at the start of your next turn, but only if it's still assigned to your meeple. And there's a few other uses here, but the other players can choose, instead of placing one of their own meeples, to place the fairy meeple and steal it away from you. So we'll see what our cunning tutorial opponent is planning here. And he let us get away with it. So we scored a victory point there. So that's great. So we're going to grab this city here, and we're going to place a meeple in the city. And then our tutorial opponent is going to build out his city there. And instead of placing a meeple, he's going to steal the fairy in hopes of scoring those points later. So any player can control the fairy. It's basically that, whoever you just pass the fairy back and forth. Now the second advantage of the fairy is that the owner of the fairy will score 3 bonus points when the feature the fairy is resting on is scored. So whether that's road or city, it's all good. So if you look here, this is kind of a sneaky move. So we're going to close off our city. Now before we score that, we can actually steal that fairy, and that will give us, instead of placing a meeple, like a farmer, for example, we get to steal the fairy, and that's going to give us the 6 points plus the 3 points from the fairy there. So kind of an interesting mechanic. It certainly gives you something to do if you place a tile and there really isn't anything to do because you're just building out a road or building out a city to eventually score, but you don't want to put down farmers yet. It kind of gives you something to do with with your turn, which I kind of like. So it kind of has, and I like how you steal it back and forth. It's kind of kind of fun. So now keep in mind that the player who owns the fairy need not be the player who closes the feature in order to earn the 3 points. So if the feature is like a city is closed, for example, then you would get 3 points, as long as you have a meeple with the assigned fairy in that city. So again, another way that you can kind of, if it's a smaller city, you can get into At least you get some points out of it if you have the fairy. So I quite like this the fairy mechanic. It's just kind of a nice way, so you feel like you're never wasting a turn. Now here's the volcano tile. Now when you get it, the dragon moves onto it, and you're not allowed to place a meeple on it for good reasons. So we're going to place the volcano, and generally speaking, you're going to want to place the volcano closer to your opponent's meeples. Now the dragon's going to move around and eventually get to to threaten your meeples as well. But anyway, because we didn't get to place a meeple, we're going to steal the fairy back, which is great. And there we go. The mechanics are a little bit slow on that. And then the dragon appears. And so it's only a matter of time before it starts roaming the land. And our opponent places that tile. Doesn't do very much. And then steals the fairy back, which is good. And now we picked up a tile. If you look here, it's got the dragon movement icon. And once your turn ends, the dragon's going to start moving around the board. So we'll place it here for our sort of to add to our road. And we're going to steal the fairy godmother here and put it on our meeple. And the advantage of that is that the dragon cannot consume a meeple with a fairy godmother. So that meeple is now protected. In fact, the entire tile is protected. So that is a good thing. Now, because the dragon was triggered by that tile, by the icon on that tile, it now moves 6 spaces. The active player starts the dragon's movement and you alternate. And yet the only limitation is you can move to any adjacent tile, but not one that it can't move to one that it just visited during the dragon movement. So now in this case, it doesn't fly off the board, so it has to stay on the on the board that exists. So obviously there's going to be more options for movement as the board expands. But where we are now, we're just going to go and we're going to eat this opponent's meeple right there. There he goes. Now the opponent gets a chance to move. When the meeple is eaten, though, it goes back to their hand, to their tray. So it's kind of a neat thing. You can potentially steal a feature away from an opponent, or if you've got even one of your own one of your own meeples that's trapped in an impossible monastery or something like that, the dragon can actually help you reclaim it. So it's not an entirely malicious presence. It could have some benefit to you as well. Now he doesn't want to eat his own meeples, so he's going to go there. And so we only have one choice as far as movement goes, and we're going to go there. And as I said, our meeple is protected by the fairy godmother. So now our opponent is forced to eat one of his own meeples. So he chooses to go that way. And so you can see these gold coins here at the top. That's how many moves the dragon has. So we're in move 5 here out of 6. And then our opponent is going to move the final space here. So this is its last turn of movement, but keep in mind that the dragon's movement can be interrupted if it cannot move. If it's trapped, it will just interrupt the move. It won't be able to continue. All right, the dragon's move has ended. And that once the dragon's movement is finished, then you can just resume where it left off. So it's kind of a tricky prospect because you never know who's going to move the dragon first and where they're going to move it. And so you kind of it's almost just a hand of fate, almost kind of mechanic. To be honest, I'm not a massive fan of it, although I do see kind of thematically why it makes sense. And why it might be fun to eat other meeples and so forth. But I think it undoes a lot of the strategy in the game. Unfortunately, if you get a nice, great farmer down in a perfect spot, well, guess who's going to be targeted by the dragon by all the other players. So anyway, it's but it is interesting and certainly thematic. Now, when you draw a princess tile, you play it normally, but it has an additional power. Instead of placing a meeple on the tile, you can remove a meeple from the city bearing the princess's icons. So we're going to play it in our opponent's city here, and that's going to allow us to remove his meeple there. I'm assuming he's male in this case. The city is now unclaimed and is up for grabs, assuming the opponent doesn't get the city tile. And he didn't. He got a road tile. And so that potentially gives us the opportunity to get in there. Now, this is a magic portal space, and you place it like you would any other, but where you can place the meeple, you can place it on any unclaimed and unfinished feature on the board. So if there's an opportunity, as there is, you can place this here, and then the meeple can be placed wherever. Well, we happen to have just opened up this city for capture, so we will play there. And now we're in the driver's seat. We closed off the roads. That gave us 3 points for the ferry and 7 points for the length of the road. And so you can see how the princess works. And again, I don't know if I'm a massive fan of that mechanic. I feel it undoes a lot of good hard work in a somewhat I hate to say the word cheap, but it seems like it's a kind of it certainly adds to the chaos of the game. And again, with these expansions, like any expansions, there's always going to be things you like, and you can include them or not include them. I love the ferry mechanic. I like the large meeple, for example. I think the inn and the and so forth and the cathedrals are fine mechanics to kind of take the normal game of. There's a little bit of kind of, I don't know if push your luck's the exact word, but it's that idea of trying to get one more tile out of your road or trying to get one more tile out of your city before you close it, and those bits add to that characteristic. The dragon, the princess, I'm a little more cool on those as far as that goes. I like kind of like the magic portal, though. I think that is kind of a neat mechanic, and certainly necessary given the fact that your meeples are going to be eaten or otherwise removed by the other two. These other two mechanics here. So anyway, overall though, I always like these expansions and just to the new twist they give to the games, and they basically they allow you to continue to replay a game that you may have played out otherwise, and that's always a great thing. If it gets a game to a table, I'm a fan of it, and this is certainly adds some intrigue to that for that purpose. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you got some value out of this little brief tutorial. I'm hoping to put together some more content on Carcassonne and certainly on these expansions. So anyway, thank you again. And please take a moment if you can to like, comment, subscribe, and let us know what you think down below. And once again, this is NATO, and this is Legendary Tactics.